Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Vanik Smart classes. So, in the series of international institutions that we have taken some other institutions in the previous classes. In this series, today we are going to discuss about the non-alignment movement, or popularly known as NAM, or non-alignment movement. You see, this is a post-Second World War development. In the post-Second World War period, some important developments of the post-Second World period were the emergence of hundreds of countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America who became independent from colonial rule. The second development was that colonialism came to an end, and third development was the emergence of two power blocs. So one led by the USA and the other led by the USSR. Okay. So, in the post Second World War period, so there is intense polarization. So, two powers. One, it is the one side it is USA, and other side is USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. Fine. So this is the capitalist bloc. This is the socialist bloc, and the world was divided. And these newly independent countries, fine. So large in number. So they were attracted by the two. So the immense pressure was on them from both the sides, this side as well as this side. So to drag them to their fold or their camp or their umbrella, because in that era of power rivalry or establishing their domination in the global politics, these two power blocs influenced by two different ideology, so they decided, let us try to have as many countries as possible under our umbrella, so we can show to the world that more number of independent countries are in our camp or being influenced by our ideology, either capitalist ideology or socialist ideology. Fine. And during this period, so these independent countries, so who are called as infant because they are just born or they got their independence and are very new to the system of governance, so how to administer themselves. So they were much confused, and there is immense pressure on them. There is allurement from the two power blocks. There is threat from the two power blocks, and they are individually unable to handle this threat. Okay, so some prominent leader of these country, they decided, let think of our own unity or the unity of these independent newly independent country, and our independence may protect us from these immense pressure of the superpower blocks. Hello, class search. 130 per fine. So it is the so they decided, if we unite, then it may provide us the scope to show our strength, and our unity will give us the strength, and our unity will ensure that uh, the pressure exerted by this country on us will be okay. That is the whole issue. That's why, so say that some prominent leaders, they decided, let's think of this, and that is the reason for the creation of NAM or non-alignment movement, as the name suggests. So the background is this: NAM was created during the period of intense bloc polarization when two power blocks emerge in the global context. So they decided to drag these newly countries to their fold, and joining those countries may lead to losing their independence once again, directly or indirectly. So good sense prevails in the prominent newly independent countries and their leaders who took the initiative of creating an organization so which will give them unity, which will facilitate them to pursue independent foreign policy, remaining aloof from the superpower bloc politics. This is the background under which NAM was conceived, or the idea was floated. For this organization to be created, so the majority countries are from Asia and Africa, because these are the continent from where hundreds of nations emerged independence in the post Second World War period. And so the Asian Conference organized in New Delhi in 1947 and 1949 were the stepping stones towards creating this organization. So these two conferences you have to remember. One is the Asian Conference organized in New Delhi in 1947 and 1949, and the Afro-Asian Conference at Bandung, Indonesia in 1955. So this is this small error here. So it is 55 minutes. Okay, and the conference, the Bandung Conference of 1955, that led to the creation of this organization. And first is the two Asian conferences organized at New Delhi in 1947 and 49, and the Afro-Asian Conference of Bandung, Indonesia in 1955. These conferences laid the foundation of understanding between countries who later launched the organization called NAM. So this is how the organization came into being in the global scenario, as the group of newly independent country who want to follow some neutral independent foreign policy, and who are have the desire to remain aloof from the bloc politics, and to remain aloof from this pressure of these superpowers. So this is the background. The 29 countries of Asia and Africa who attended the Bandung Conference in 1955, so condemned colonialism, emphasized the need for economic growth, and called for reduction in international tension based on the principle of cooperation and peaceful coexistence. So they are the Afro-Asian countries, and so the 29 countries who attended the Bandung Conference of 1955, so they decided to that colonialism is at a cost to the independence of the country, and they condemned colonialism in any form or manifestation, emphasized on the need for economic growth among the newly independent countries, and called for reduction in the international tension based on the principle of cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Because why this international tension? In the post Second World period, the two power blocks, they try to put pressure on these countries, and they started fighting among themselves. So it is called the era of Cold War. You must be knowing this. So that is the period when, so there is the concept of Cold War was in vogue. So the concept called Cold War, and Cold War is a period of intense armament built up. Although there is no direct recourse to war, but they go on building, adding to the stockpile of armaments by both the superpowers. So, and in this period, they try to emphasize an economic development and reduction in the international trade tension based on principle of cooperation and peaceful coexistence. That is the ideology promoted by the leaders who decided to, or the countries who decided to form a parallel, a different organization which will be remaining aloof from this superpower bloc politics. Soon after the Bandung Conference, two prominent leaders, Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister of India, and the Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, met the much respected non-aligned leader and the President of Yugoslavia, Marshal Joseph Tito, at Belgrade in Yugoslavia. and issue a joint statement expressing their support to the Bandung resolutions. The other most important leaders is Sukarno and is the leader of Indonesia. So these like Nehru, Nasir, Tito, Sukarno, so they are the mastermind behind the creation of this organization, which was launched as a movement called NAM, because it was not launched as a new institution, rather it is given a NAM, so that can get a lively manifestation in times to come. Okay, so these four leaders, Nehru, Nasir, Tito, and Sukarno, are the leaders who were the mastermind behind the formation of this organization called in the shape of a movement called the Non-Alignment Movement. And it was launched at Belgrade in 1961, which was attended by 25 countries. So, for information, these things you have to remember. So, the organization finally was grounded in 1961. Oh, and it was the meeting was held in Belgrade in Yugoslavia, and it was attended by 25 countries. This conference identified some criteria for inviting country to join NAM, which included independence in country's foreign policy, non-membership in any military bloc, not providing military base on its territory, and opposition to colonialism and imperialism in any form. You see, this is where the objectives are highlighted. Okay, so the principle or the principles on which this organization was created. So this you can call the principles of NAM. Or the principle, so independence in the country's foreign policy. The country should follow independent foreign policy. Non-membership of any military bloc. So they should not be member of any military bloc. Like there is a military bloc led by USA. It was known as NATO. North Atlantic Treaty Organization. There is another parallel military bloc led by USSR. Okay, it was Warsaw. So it was a condition, or it was one of the principle of this NAM, that the member countries should neither join any of these military bloc like NATO and Warsaw promoted by US and USSR respectively, and not providing military base in its territory, because during that period these two superpowers, so they always try to establish military base in the newly independent countries to spread their hegemony or to spread their influence. But the NAM principle so made it a condition that these country should not give their territory or allow their territory to be used for military base in for any of these superpowers. Okay, so this is where the development started. Okay, and the organization created, and one more thing. So is that opposition to colonialism and imperialism. So it was very well known from the beginning that they decided that colonialism and this imperialism will overcome, and the newly independent country will be following the principles set by NAM, and they will follow it for a wider interest of the newly independent country of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So next, move to the objectives of this organization. When this organization was created, so it has the objective to promote the transition from the old world order based on domination to a new order based on freedom, equality, and social justice and well-being of all. You know, the old world order, which was in the Second World War period, so it to be changed to a new world order. So the new world order is to be based on the principle of. Okay, what is the principle? So based on the principle of freedom, equality, and social justice and well-being of all. The old world order was based on domination of one by the other, because during that period there are colonial masters who dominated the colonies. Their economy was made subservient to the economy of the colonial masters. So they never allow any interest or the promoting the interest of the other or the colonies, rather they promote their own interest. So under the circumstances, so the new world order to based on freedom, equality, and social justice and well-being of all. Then the second objective is to pursue peace, achievement of disarmament, and settlement of dispute by peaceful means. Second World War came to an end with a very unique and that very threatening issue, like that Second World War was ended with the use of nuclear weapons. For the first time, the human civilization it saw the uh, danger of nuclear weapon, and how and what kind of devastation it can create. So that is how it was. So they pursue for peace because they know that peace is to be the long-term goal of the organization. And then comes achievement of disarmament, because during the period these two power blocks were busy in armament built up, called the phase of arms race. It is known as arms race. No, the concept is known as arms race. The intense armament built up. Okay, so they don't want to go for arms race, rather they want to go for disarmament and settle dispute by peaceful means. Even among these member country, so there is possibility of dispute, but they decided that all the disputes are to be settled out through peaceful means, without resorting to any war or any loss of life and property or any havoc in the society. Okay, then sought for effective and acceptable solution to one economic problems. That economic problem was very much prominent during the period, because nations are not that economically well off. So they are poor. They are at the very fast stage of the development. They have just become independent. Very few of them are economically prosperous, and all on a sudden they face the challenge of how to govern the territory of their own, how to ensure the development of their own country, and lot other things are there. So these are all challenges before them. So keeping that in view, so they try to make it a principle that let make effective and acceptable solution, or find solution to the world's economic problems. Then, support for self-determination and independence for all people living under colonial and alien domination and foreign occupation. Because so by the time this was created, some other countries were also under colonial domination. So NAM as a principle also said that so they should facilitate or promote end of colonialism. They should promote that no country should be ruled by an alien power, and no country should be under any foreign occupation. That was another principle of or objective of NAM. Then next is seek on sustainable and environmental sound development. Development was the requirement which was realized by them all, but they also plan that let make development environmentally sustainable. Even during that period, so when environment was not a very big concern, so this group has the means imagination, the procrastination, or the vision to think of environment and environment in a sustainable manner. So the sustainable development issue, which emerged subsequently, was okay in their mind. So they try for sustainable development and environmentally sustainable development. That is another issue. Then comes to promote fundamental rights and freedom, and contribute to strengthen the role of effective role and effectiveness of UNO. So this group called the NAM, so they tried to promote the cause of United Nations, because prior to them United Nations was created, and if United Nations was there, so they thought that why not the global community which has created the global organization follow the principles set by United Nations. If they set that principles of United Nations, then it is also very important and essential that they should uh, follow the principles, okay, of United Nations and follow it in spirit. That is why, so the NAM as a group tried to promote the cause of this United Nations, because it was the most effective and most wide wider principle organization at the international level, with widest number of members, and with principle and objectives which were set very prominently. So they decided to go for promoting the cause of United Nations. So these are the objectives of the group called non-alignment movement, launched in the post Second World War period by the emerging country of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, who emerged from colonial rule, and they decided to follow a foreign independent foreign policy. Okay, and that's why they want to create a organization of their own. Then coming to the structure. So every organization, for its effective functioning, must have a organizational structure. So that will discuss the NAM organization at the following structure or formal structure. At the top is the Conference of Heads of State. So this is at the top. Conference of Heads of the States, when they meet at the NAM Summit. So they meet in the formal forum called the NAM Summit. And the below it is the meeting of the foreign ministers, so they meet regularly. Apart from the NAM summit, then the coordinating bureau, which coordinate the activity of the organization. So at the top is the conference of head of the state, which is not regular, but it meet at 3 years interval, at times slightly delayed, but this is the top decision making body of the organization, followed by the meeting of the foreign ministers. They meet frequently to discuss the emerging issues, and the coordinating bureau remain present throughout as the most effective and active organization to promote the issue of this organization, and it is the permanent body of the uh, international grouping called non-alignment movement. Okay, so the conference of the head of the state is held 3 years interval, as it is known as the NAM summit. So this is known as the NAM summit. The conference of the heads of the state or government, okay, which is held in 3 years interval, is known as the NAM summit, and so it is being held since the organization has been created. The first summit was held at Belgrade, where the organization was grounded with 25 nations as a member, and the second summit was held. You see, I'm giving all the details of this grouping, and so the first summit was held at Belgrade in 1961, followed by the second one in 1964 at in it is Cairo, Cairo. So there is a mistake over here, Cairo. It is a place in Egypt. Okay, so it was attended by 46 nations. So this proved the popularity of the organization. By the next summit, the membership has jumped from 25 to nearly double to 46. Then the third summit was held in 1970 at Lusaka in Zambia, an African country. The fourth summit was held in 1973 at Algiers in Algeria. Then the fifth summit was held at Colombo in Sri Lanka. The sixth summit was held at Havana, Cuba. The seventh summit was hosted by New Delhi in India. The eighth summit was held at Harare in Zimbabwe, and the ninth summit was held. It was at Belgrade in Yugoslavia, and the 10th summit was Jakarta in Colombia, Cartagena in Colombia. So the 10th was at Jakarta in Indonesia. The 11th was at Cartagena in Colombia. The 12th summit was at Durban in South Africa, and the 13th summit was Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. The 14th summit was at Havana in Cuba, and the 15th summit was uh, at Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. The 16th summit was at Tehran in Iran, and the 17th summit was Venezuela, and the 18th summit was at Baku in Azerbaijan. So from the creation till 2019, so 18th summit has taken place, and the last summit was at Baku in Azerbaijan, and here the membership increased to 120 from year 25, and there are 17 observers who were also attending the meeting as an observer country, although they have not been made full-fledged member, but they have been attending the conference, the summits as observer. They are observing the members interaction, participating but they are just on the way of receiving or waiting to receive the membership in future. So this proved the popularity of this group, that how from a mere 25 group body, this has 25 body, this has been expanded to 120. That means a big uh, jump in the membership. That is because of its popularity of the organization and the ideology for which it has been created. Okay, so let's discuss the role played by the organization in pursuance of its aims. The Belgrade Conference of 1961 adopted a 27-point declaration which condemned all manifestations of colonialism and imperialism, as we have discussed it. The Cairo Conference in 64 adopted the declaration Program for Peace and International Cooperation, which asserted that peace could be achieved only if the principle of universal freedom, equality, and justice were observed, and only with the abolition of imperialism, colonialism, and neo-colonialism. Colonialism ended, but a new neo-colonialism, like in the shape of investment, bringing under the financial plot, influencing, keeping it as not as a colony but as a follower, is the new colonialism concept. So that has to be ended. So they resolve on this. The Havana Conference of 1979 reiterated the movement's non-bloc nature, that they are not going to join any of the power blocs, and its opposition to both hegemony and all forms of imperialism. Hegemony by one country, so that was opposed, and also imperialism, that means the intention to develop empire, colonialism and neo-colonialism. In 1989, again at the Belgrade summit, member favored a return to the group's original posture of neutrality, but also emphasized on the need to modernize and develop a realistic, far-sighted, and creative approach to international issue, in which consensus and cooperation would be preferred over confrontation. So they agreed that don't go for confrontation, rather go for consensus, and consensus can lead to more development. That was what was discussed at different summits of the organization. Okay, and what else the comes under its achievement can be credited? NAM has been credited for achievements. NAM has also been instrumental in promoting the rights of self-determination um, for all people and racial equality among all. The 1961 and 63 conference placed moral, political, and material support of national movement to the national movement of their time. The South African government's policy of forced segregation, called the apartheid policy, was condemned at the 1986 summit. Namibia was supported in its independence struggle. In Vietnam, the Vietnam people's right to choose their own political, economic, and social system was endorsed. In Cuba, the anti-neo-colonialist resistance movement were supported against oppressive local regime. In West Asia, NAM recognized the right of Palestinian people to have their own homeland in the Israel-Palestinian conflict, and condemned the physical annihilation and displacement of the indigenous people by Israel with covert assistance from the Western power, especially USA. In 1997, NAM criticized Israel for continuing to build Jewish settlement in the occupied territory and East Jerusalem, called the Increased Assistance to Palestine and urged members to discontinue effort to improve relations with Israel, while the government there must be more positive influence in the peace process. So, because that period, Israel-Palestine conflict was at its height, and there is a regular tension between the two. So, this NAM group supported the cause of Palestine because they are the people whose land has been taken away by the Israeli by the Jews for creation of their own country, and the Jewish state of Israel was recognized at the international community, whereas the original country called the Palestine with people, territory, everything was not recognized internationally. So that was the reason the NAM supporting the Palestinian cause at different period of its existence and at the different summits that had been organized, because it put immense pressure on the group or on the two sides, like the especially on Israel, to ensure that there is a two-nation solution and the Palestinians should get their legitimate indigenous right for self-determination. NAM has repeatedly called for the prohibition on use of nuclear weapons and a comprehensive treaty to ban test of nuclear weapons. There have been proposals to reform the United Nations and other international institutions to make them more responsive and to the needs of the developing world. Because United Nations reform is a necessity at present, because so since its creation there is a fourfold growth in its membership, but commensurate represents the members at the Security Council is not there, and the Western domination in the United Nations is still very prominent. So that needs a reforms to make it more democratic, more representative, and give the or manifest the present geopolitical situation at the United Nations Global Forum. Economic equality is another principle that NAM upholds. In fact, focus on economic problems began in as early as 1973 when the Algeria Summit, Algeria. There is an appeal for the concerted action by the poor nations against the industrialized world. The call became the basis of a debate with the UN for a new international economic order. This NIEO, as you have seen it here, this is popularly known as the new international economic order. This is what is this is the new international economic order. That is what NAM has brought into focus the long-standing global economic division between the North and the South. At the 1992 summit, NAM asked developed nations to give urgent priority to establishing a more equitable global economy and to assist developing and, ass- and to assist developing nations resolving the problems of low commodity prices and crossing debt burden. At the same time, members were called upon to commit themselves to a measure of self-reliance in the areas such as population control, food self-sufficiency, as well as to extend South-South trade and investment cooperation in order to increase the influence of developing country and reduce the dependence. Class चलती like class कौन कर रहा like class चलती call back कर Okay, so that is what, so self-reliance in areas population control and food self-sufficiency, because most of these country were suffering from the food crisis. So they are independent, newly independent country. So although agriculture are the mainstay, but still due to famine, flood like situation, they are unable to produce enough to feed their people. So depend on food security, and also population growth was a big challenge for most of the country. So these are the issues discussed, and to extend South-South trade and investment cooperation in order to increase the influence of developing country, and to reduce the dependence on the north, because north south divide was a very big issue at the NAM forum, because this north south, the north is the developed group and south is the developing and underdeveloped group. So this north-south divide was a hot point of discussion, and they try to reduce the influence of the north and enhance the cooperation and interaction among the south. So this benefit will be more to their own southern hemisphere countries. Okay, NAM has also urged industrialized nations to adopt a more just system of world trade, because the industrialized country always try to dominate world trade, so dump their products, put the price. And at the Durban Summit of 1998, NAM called for a dialogue to review the role of global financial body like the IMF and World Bank and WTO in developing nations. Because no, these IMF and World Bank, two institutions created by the Britain Conference in 1945, so they are still Western dominated by the European Union, by the Europe and American country dominate these two global financial body. And the NAM is always in favor of reforms and give representation to the newly independent countries, because the change in the change economic situation, these countries are also become economically powerful, but there is no commensurate increase in their sharing, their voting and their share in the World Bank and IMF. So also the WTO, which is created much later in 1995, that also is controlled or dominated by the Western countries. So these are all points discussed at the different NAM summit, and they decided to give the developing and emerging country more role at IMF, World Bank, and WTO. Okay, and at the, if you see the next, at the annual meeting of the Foreign Mission 2000 in Cartagena, Colombia, member countries. Okay. Member countries approved the democratic norm whereby countries under military rule could not be allowed to attend the conference of heads of states. The 13th summit of NAM countries was held at that World Trade Center in Kuala Lumpur. The theme of the summit attended by 120 members, which concluded in two new members, Timor and that Saint Vincent, was continuing to revitalize NAM. So they, because they realized NAM need to be revitalized as per the changing circumstances or the changing global situation, and it was adopted. The Kuala Lumpur Declaration, titled Continuing the Revitalization of NAM, resolved to promote a multipolar world by strengthening the UN to fight international terrorism, because terrorism find a mention also at the NAM Declaration. The declaration outlines a nine-pronged strategy that will enhance unity among the member states, strengthen the multilateral process, promote democratization, and foster South-South cooperation in political, social, cultural, economic, and scientific fields. You see, these are the domains which have been explored more and more by NAM. So, political, social, cultural, economic, and scientific fields, they have been added to the domain of NAM. Widening the distinction between the terrorism and self-determination, NAM's statement on terrorism, which form part of the Kuala Lumpur Declaration, condemn terrorism regardless of the identity of the person involved in the place by their they might choose as their theatre of action. You know, for some it is terrorism, and some justify it as the freedom struggle or struggle for self-determination. The direct in the case of Kashmir. So it pronounced assent to the Security Council Resolution 1373, which was accepted as the blueprint against terrorism for implementation at the United Nations level. It discussed the Iraqi situation, in North Korean situation, all these issues and the challenges were discussed at different point of time at the NAM forum. So this shows that this organization has done a lot since its creation, and uh, there is a big challenge to its present situation, because with the dissolution of USSR or disintegration of USSR in the 1990s, so the power blocks crumbled. So the world became from bipolar to unipolar, and so question mark was raised on the relevance of now, because so in the change circumstances, there is only one superpower called the USA with the disintegration of USSR. So they that the it was the opinion was gaining momentum. Why what is the relevance of now? Because there is no existence of the power block, so all countries are either to follow the capitalist ideology, or there is no other option left before them. That's why they told NAM has lost its relevance. But this was more declared by or pronounced by USA administration, and one of its Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice So when she was the Secretary of State, so she told it very boldly that Nam has lost its relevance, and it was opposed by the countries who are the founder of Nam. But for them, Nam is not only a international organization; it is a movement, and the movement is launched with a vision for the future, and this being a lively entity. So they justify the relevance of Nam, and what they justified. So on what ground they justified? So they justified this on the ground the Cold War provided a sense of stability to various regions and proved effective in preventing conflict among the regional powers because there are two power blocks handling them. But in the end of Cold War, so world became unipolar. So now must be there to protect the interest of these uh, developing and underdeveloped nations because they are patronaged by one of the power blocks each over because so one power block disintegrated. Secondly, the phenomenal scientific and technological advance in the past century have prepared the ground for today's information age. However, most fundamental problems of poverty, literacy, overpopulation, unemployment still present in these groups. So that needs to be handled. So NAM can play a very good role in this. Thirdly, equitable development of nations and the world continue to remain an unfinished goal of NAM movement, and that need to be further promoted because there are so many unfinished goals to achieve the different targets set by now. International terrorism supported by religious fundamentalism has emerged, and that can be and most of the NAM nations being the victims of terrorism, NAM can play a very important role in countering terrorism. NAM can act as a forum to checkmate the big power and democratize the United Nations, the WTO, the IMF, the World Bank. So that is relevance. And the sixth, by virtue of the principle and okay, its principle and wide membership base, it can promote more and more South-South cooperation in the field of spreading of FDI, technology, development, human resources, information and information communication technology, energy, security. So these are the ground based on which it is very well uh, advocated that NAM has not lost its relevance. NAM is still valid, still relevant, and that is how its members is growing. This unity is giving them strength. They are confronting the big powers on equal footing because they are able to, through the adhering to NAM's principle, they are able to follow independent and neutral foreign policy. So, students, this is how you can write the answer because this is also a big question that a important question for you, the relevance of NAM. NAM is relevant for this purpose as I discussed. So go through this content given in the slides and also just review the class and see it once and for more often also to have a clear idea on the things so you can get the benefit of having all the idea about this organization, its principle, its objectives, its achievements and the challenges before it. So in case this comes as a questions in your civil service examination at the state or central level, you'll be able to answer it well. So thank you for watching this and hope that in the next classes we will discuss about some more institutions of international repute that are important for your exam point of view. Thank you. Thank you for watching.